Posterity has left us an image of Ronald Reagan as an incompetent president. And yet, November 13th, 1979. The United States is feeling down. Its golden age is gone. That day, a former actor making his comeback is preparing to rekindle the flame that is so lacking.
Ladies and gentlemen, Ronald Reagan.
Good evening. I'm here tonight to announce my intention to seek the Republican nomination for President of the United States. I cannot and will not stand by and see this great country destroy itself. And
in a country haunted by decline, his determination hit the mark. He's not a great ideologue, nor is he an intellectual, but he has an instinctive understanding of where the heart of America beats.
For our country's future, I pledge you my every effort. I ask for your prayers and your support. I believe that together, we can keep this rendezvous with destiny.
The moment he announces his candidacy, the press shows its contempt. A clown playing in the big league? This can't be serious.
Thank you very much.
He's old, outdated, and has big shortcomings. His 8 years as governor of California do not count.
Just fine, just fine.
With no international experience, he does not have the stature of a head of state. But in this electoral year, patriotism is in vogue, and Reagan meets the brief with style. Meeting after meeting, his fiery speeches have the knack of galvanizing the crowds.
We're Americans. And yes, we want to bring the blessings of peace and progress and freedom to others.
Whenever he appears, there's a bond between him and the public that is the hallmark of the most gifted politicians. With this slogan that has gone down in history, he convinces Americans that a new golden age is possible.
Let us pledge to each other, with this great lady looking on, that we can, and so help us God, we will make America great again.
Recovering growth and restoring pride, the champion of American honor believes this with all his might. From his youth, he's always had the motto, life is one grand sweet song. So start the music. Back then, defeat in Vietnam still weighs heavily on people's minds. The Watergate scandal left a sour taste in the mouth, and the Soviet enemies seemed stronger and more formidable than ever. A few months earlier, the Red Army had invaded Afghanistan, and the United States had been unable to prevent it. In Iran, Islamists had dethroned the Shah, Washington's unconditional ally in the region. Recently, the U.S. Embassy in Tehran had been stormed, and its staff held hostage. The attempt to free them had ended in disaster. America is in decline, but Reagan is determined to restore its supremacy at any price.
It is absolutely essential that we increase our spending for national defense if we're to preserve the peace.
To his political opponents, his ambitions are smoke and mirrors.
To know that they are going to vote their conscience.
Some condemn his simplistic ideas. Others charge him with amateurism. As for the voters, they need something tangible.
is some... If you will listen for a minute, what I'm trying to tell you is, I can't do a damn thing for you if I don't get elected.
At that time, the largest economic power in the world is a weakened giant. Consumed by inflation and unemployment, devoured by competition from Japan and Germany, gloom had given way to disillusionment. In a United States mired in crisis, Reagan seems like a savior. Won over by the theses of the Chicago School, a movement that opposes state intervention in the economy, the candidate hammers home its credo.
My own plan is based on a combination of fiscal responsibility. It means cutting out fat and extravagance that are built into the federal government. There is enough fat in that government today that if you rendered it and made soap, you could wash the world.
A statement combined with a promise that appeals to voters.
We must halt this fiscal self-destruction and restore sanity to our economic system. I've long advocated a 30% reduction in income tax rates over a period of 3 years.
In other words, rather than announcing sacrifices, Reagan does not ask the people for any effort at all.
Thank you.
An approach rejected by most of the country's elite, including within his own camp. George Bush, his closest competitor for the Republican primary, is condescending. He goes so far as to describe Reagan's program as voodoo magic. But Reagan serves him a crushing defeat. On July 17, 1980, he wins his party's nomination. He makes the strategically sound choice of nominating the loser of the day as his running mate and rallies all wings of the party behind him. Reagan had turned the page. The uncompromising sheriff's style settling of scores for which he is so famous are part of the past.
You wanted law and order in this town. You've got it. I'll shoot the first man who starts for those steps.
It must be said that before entering politics, Reagan had a long acting career behind him. Over the course of 60 films, he's played everything from gunslinger to preacher. He has the ability to come across as natural when giving a speech he's given 1,000 times. And when he pretends to ad-lib, he's using all the tricks of a trade that he knows inside out.
I'll confess that I've been a little afraid to suggest what I'm going to suggest. I'm more afraid not to. Can we begin our crusade, joined together in a moment of silent prayer? God bless America.
Thus, through an inimitable mix of messianism, patriotic communion, and humility, the former Hollywood actor sets off to conquer the White House. All that remains is to discredit his Democratic opponent, President Jimmy Carter, with one of his best jokes that he dusts off for any occasion.
Jimmy Carter's administration tells us we're only in a recession, not a depression. If it's a definition he wants, I'll give him one. A recession is when your neighbor loses his job. A depression is when you lose yours. And recovery is when Jimmy Carter loses his.
But making his supporters laugh is not enough to win a presidential election. And as the final round draws near, his advisors are full of doubt. The televised debate pitting him against the incumbent president puts them in a cold sweat. Their protege confuses Afghanistan with Pakistan. He does not even know the names of foreign heads of state, and he has not fully mastered any of the subjects to be addressed. But Reagan knows how to put on a good front. Relaxed and smiling, he is the master of the screen.
I was a Democrat. I said many foolish things back in those days.
Standing opposite, Jimmy Carter, who is on edge due to the high stakes, seems dull and laborious.
Governor Reagan's proposal is one of the most highly inflationary ideas that ever has been presented to the American public.
Why is it inflationary to let the people keep more of their money and spend it the way they'd like? And it isn't inflationary to let him take that money and spend it the way he wants.
In concluding, Reagan deals the decisive blow. In just a few words, he wipes out his rival's record.
Next Tuesday, all of you will go to the polls. You'll stand there in the polling place and make a decision. I think when you make that decision, it might be well if you would ask yourself, are you better off than you were 4 years ago? Is it easier for you to go and buy things in the stores than it was 4 years ago? Is America as respected throughout the world as it was? Then I could suggest another choice that you have.
The Republican challenger coast to coast. Blue for Ronald Reagan, red for Jimmy Carter. It's also a major victory for conservative thought in America.
Reagan, who had been given no chance of winning, romps home with a resounding victory. It is a tsunami. On January 21st, 1981, a man looking every inch a conqueror is poised to become the 40th president of the United States. He is nearly 70 years old and has an unshakable faith in the future of his country. His victory is one of hope. No one imagines at the time that America is on the verge of a revolution.
That I will faithfully execute the office of President of the United States.
He sets the tone in his inauguration speech.
In this present crisis, government is not the solution to our problem. Government is the problem.
No offense to Democrats, the hours of the welfare state are numbered. Giving way to reforms to reduce the role of the state to the free market, unfettered capitalism enters the United States with a bang.
Now take a deep breath and hold it. I'll try not to hurt too much.
Soon, however, a shadow appears, and it is no trivial matter.
I'm a street homicide detective. Howard, sex, money. I don't think that murder changes.
Can 21st century police work and groundbreaking science crack history's unsolved crimes?
What do you think is going on there?
I think it's opportunity.
There's this phrase about letting the bones speak. But I think we've got our murder weapon.
I think the evidence is going to be there.
Brand new, unearthed, ancient murder mysteries. Thursday at 10 on Viasat History.
Gods, monsters, superhuman heroes.
The legend might well be true.
Are ancient treasures and dangers waiting to be found?
There's a shipwreck there. There's another one right there. That's just strange.
Something which even in this world of science we cannot fully explain.
An international network of experts test the limits of mystery.
Everybody's afraid of what they don't understand, especially when it can sneak up fast and kill you at a distance.
Are they one clue away from the truth?
Unbelievable.
Myths, Great Mysteries of Humanity on Viasat History.
Pius XII was the Pope who failed to condemn Hitler.
Why didn't he say more?
We explore recently opened Vatican archives in search of answers.
Hitler does not trust Pius XII at all.
The Pope did what he could to save as many Jews as possible.
If they were caught, the Nazis' anger would be merciless.
Vatican Secret Files Exposed, The Pope and the Devil, Monday at 10 on Viasat History.
find the evidence, you've got to climb down through history.
These were the first fugitives in antiquity.
This is a copy of Grace Kelly's will, and it's fascinating.
It's amazing that it's here in situ, 800 years later.
It was about glory and power and wealth.
Holy cow.
Neanderthals probably lived on this planet longer than we have done so far.
This is the story of how the Vikings changed the world.
The term piracy is actually quite apt.
För dem var det en förmån att ha allians med kyrkan.
En fin de compte, c'est de s'installer. Ce n'est pas uniquement de piller à court terme.
Viking season on Viasat History.
The rise, the fall, and evolution.
Diana changed the way the monarchy appeared.
From the First World War to the present day.
It's very challenging, the craft of ruling these days.
The sensational story of power and its price. Royals Keeping the Crown, Sunday the 7th of May on Viasat History.
In the White House, perplexity sets in. Morning meetings start late because Reagan needs 8 to 9 hours of sleep, never less.
At 8:10 a.m., the president walks down a 7:30 meeting of President Reagan's senior staff. On the table are grapefruit, coffee, and coconut donuts.
Once he has dealt with the business of the day, he grants himself a 2 to 4 hour siesta. On Wednesday afternoons, he takes a break, and there's no question of taking files with him when he joins his wife Nancy in her private apartments. Worse still, if Reagan turns out to be lazy, his team is shocked to discover that he has no idea about his responsibilities. He finds briefings tedious and complex ideas bore him. In his diary, he writes, "I think that they're giving me more information than I really need. My brain cannot store so much. I'm tired of having to study like a schoolboy." The White House communications officers ensure he is shown as being active, running between meetings, files in hand, always in conversation, like a real team leader.
Good morning, all. Everyone looks very bright and happy. Since the agenda is mainly concerned with the economic program, though, try not to smile too much.
But his deficiencies are not slow in rising to the fore.
Now, Mr. President, I would like to say that I am not one to shrink from a tough task. But I must also say, and I think every cabinet member here will agree with me, that the goals that you gave us are extraordinarily difficult to reconcile.
His economic advisor, David Stockman, says, the new president would just nod and smile. Sometimes, he said, there's a great task ahead without finishing his sentence. He never gave instructions, and he never asked questions.
Dave, thank you very much, and I might say a thank you to all of you. I think this is just wonderful. Anything further to add? Any comments? Or?
For him, his role is to set forth a line, foster a vision, and give out sweets. Confused, visibly out of his depth, some images from a report leave people wondering about his credibility.
Listen, could you set up a meeting with Congressman Stenholm, Charlie Stenholm, about, and the group of Democrats that he represents,
on the, well, so that we can get together and talk to them about the whole economic program and all.
It is true that when left to his own devices, the president makes more and more gaffes. Talking to reporters, he comes out with confusing, counterfactual statements. One day, he claims that the main cause of pollution is carbon dioxide released by plants. Another day, that a missile in flight can be recalled. Or that the United States has more oil reserves than Saudi Arabia. The satirical TV shows are having a great time.
What is the difference between being an actor and being a president?
Well, one goes in front of a camera and wears a lot of makeup and reads lines that others have written for him and pretends to be somebody he's not. The other one makes movies.
But the Americans themselves do not hold this against him. Determined to regain their national pride, they are willing to put all logic to one side, and nothing or no one could make them change their minds. After all, their Ronnie maybe gets a bit mixed up, but he seems like one of them. And as for those who still doubt his abilities, Providence eventually wins them over. On March 30th, 1981, Reagan is the victim of an assassination attempt. An unstable person longing for fame shoots him. The bullet lodged close to his heart. 17 years after the Kennedy assassination, the United States holds its breath.
I can confirm that the president has been shot once, is in stable condition, he is conscious.
So the president is in the recovery room, and he's awake.
Against all odds, Reagan miraculously escapes with his life and makes a quick recovery. Like a superhero who escaped certain death, he now seems untouchable. And what is more, he has not lost his trademark sense of humor.
Good evening. Quote, I walked in here and I am going to walk out. With those words, the doors of George Washington University Hospital opened, and President Reagan began his trip home to the White House.
Getting time to turn for home. Yes, sir.
His forced convalescence is a big bonus. To manage his repeated gaffes, his workload is reduced to the minimum.
Mary!
No more impromptu interviews or walkabouts.
This is the actor Gil. How do you do?
And since the president is unable to improvise, all his appearances would henceforth be scripted.
Mr. Speaker, the President of the United States.
It's showtime. From now on, Reagan will simply act the part of the president, while his administration takes the reins of the country. April 28, 1981 is the date of his great Congress comeback, his first full-scale test. Reagan does his thing. First, emotion.
The warmth of your words, the expression of friendship, and yes, love, meant more to us than you can ever know. You have given us a memory that we'll treasure forever.
Next, comedy.
As a matter of fact, as evidence of that, I have a letter with me. The letter came from Peter Sweeney. He's in the 2nd grade in the Riverside School in Rockville Center. And he said, I hope you get well quick, or you might have to make a speech in your pajamas.
The actor is certainly back. But neither has the head of state forgotten any of his convictions. That same day, between two cleverly orchestrated quips, he reminds his audience that his economic recovery plan is still on the scene. The time has come to get serious.
I think you've shown that you know the one sure way to continue the inflationary spiral is to fall back into the predictable patterns of old economic practices. Isn't it time that we tried something new.
Reagan wastes no time in implementing the program promised. The president of disruption makes a clean sweep of the past. There now begins the dismantling of provisions regulating economic activity. To boost competitiveness, dozens of laws are taken off the statute book. Thus it is that supervisory standards for new drugs are abolished, along with the requirement for daily inspections in slaughterhouses and limits on workers' contact with carcinogens. These are followed by measures to reduce the size of the state. 20,000 civil service posts are cut, and the refractory had better watch their step, starting with the unions. In August 1981, when air traffic controllers go on strike, the president is brief and to the point.
That I must tell those who fail to report for duty this morning, they are in violation of the law, and if they do not report for work within 48 hours, they have forfeited their jobs and will be terminated.
The air traffic controllers hold fast, and 11,000 of them are immediately fired. Military personnel replace them at short notice. The firmness shown by Reagan gives him new stature. The young president of yesterday proves a tough liquidator. His method, cut social programs. As he sees it, they encourage idleness. If you reduce state intervention, you inevitably push citizens to take responsibility. Overnight, the poorest have their benefits reduced to the minimum. Food aid, family allowances, Social Security and disability pensions are all cut to the bone. In the richest country in the world, entire families find themselves penniless come the second half of the month. They're condemned to soup kitchens or charity. Meanwhile, the president is fulfilling his campaign promise. He brings in dramatic tax cuts. The primary beneficiaries are high earners and major corporations.
Congratulations. Thank you, sir. Attention!
Apart from economic reforms, Reagan's other obsession, which he has cultivated for decades, is his opposition to communism.
Ladies and gentlemen, I talk as Ronald Reagan, American citizen, to you, American citizen. Communism is designed to control human beings through coercion. Communism has been a singularly successful tyranny so far, as it has engulfed more than a third of mankind. They constitute the true fallout, the moral fallout, against which free men must forever give battle if our freedom and its manifold blessings are to endure.
After 25 years of relative peace, the U.S. president relaunches the Cold War. His program regarding the Soviets is summed up in one sentence: we win, they lose. Over time, his verbal arsenal becomes charged with aggression.
The only morality they recognize is what will further their cause, meaning they reserve unto themselves the right to commit any crime, to lie, to cheat, in order to attain that, and that is moral, not immoral. They are the focus of evil in the modern world.
I'm a street homicide detective. Howard, sex, money, I don't think that murder changes.
Can 21st century police work and groundbreaking science crack history's unsolved crimes?
What do you think is going on there?
I think it's opportunity.
There's this phrase about letting the bones speak. But I think we've got our murder weapon.
I think the evidence is going to be there.
Brand new, unearthed, ancient murder mysteries. Thursday at 10 on Viasat History.
Gods, monsters, superhuman heroes.
The legend might well be true.
Are ancient treasures and dangers waiting to be found?
There's a shipwreck there. There's another one right there. That's just strange.
Something which even in this world of science we cannot fully explain.
An international network of experts test the limits of mystery.
Everybody's afraid of what they don't understand, especially when it can sneak up fast and kill you at a distance.
Are they one clue away from the truth?
Unbelievable.
Myths, great mysteries of humanity on Viasat History.
Pius XII was the Pope who failed to condemn Hitler.
Why didn't he say more?
We explore recently opened Vatican archives in search of answers.
Hitler does not trust Pius XII at all.
The Pope did what he could to save as many Jews as possible.
If they were caught, the Nazis' anger would be merciless.
Vatican Secret Files Exposed, The Pope and the Devil, Monday at 10 on Viasat History.
This is the story of how the Vikings changed the world.
The term piracy is actually quite apt.
För dem var det en förmån att ha allians med kyrkan.
En fin de compte, c'est de s'installer. Ce n'est pas uniquement de piller à court terme.
Viking Season on Viasat History.
The rise, the fall, and evolution.
Diana changed the way the monarchy appeared.
From the First World War to the present day.
It's very challenging, the craft of ruling these days.
The sensational story of power and its price. Royals Keeping the Crown, Sunday the 7th of May on Viasat History.
In July 1981, for his first major overseas trip to the G7 in Ottawa, he lashes out at the French president, guilty of having appointed communist ministers to his government. Mitterrand swallows the meddling with a smile, but Reagan has no intention of stopping there. To satisfy his anti-communism, he commits to a staggering increase in the defense budget. The military-industrial complex is spoiled, protected, encouraged. Hundreds of new ships, including 2 nuclear-powered aircraft carriers and thousands of missiles, pour out of the factories. Every Pentagon program that Reagan's predecessors had vetoed is given a green light, including stealth bombers. Nothing is too good to show the Soviets that the United States has regained its muscle and knows how to use it if necessary.
To those who say we can't cut spending, lower taxes, and, yes, rebuild the defenses we need in this dangerous world, I have a 6-word answer. Yes, we can, and yes, we must.
The CIA gets a blank check to fund anti-communist organizations all over the world. Soldiers are armed and trained to fight against Nicaraguan revolutionaries. The Afghans receive $600 million to fight the Russian occupation.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Reagan's anti-Soviet policy is costed in the billions. The budget deficit becomes an abyss. In October 1981, less than a year after the presidential election, the United States is hit by an unprecedented recession. The soaring greenback hits exports hard. Rather than the president, it is the strong dollar policy imposed by the federal bank that is the cause. But Reagan will deny the extent of the damage for months. Unemployment reaches levels never seen since the Great Depression. The automobile and steel industries are in tatters. Pragmatic, the president decides to provide bailouts. But this is far from the last contradiction. After lowering taxes, he imposes new ones. The biggest tax hike in the history of the United States. This time, it is the middle classes, those whom the White House calls truck-driving rednecks, who bear the brunt. The very heart of the Reagan electorate. For them, the following year is a disaster. Impoverishment runs rampant, and those campaign promises seem nothing but a fantasy. Then, one day, a miracle occurs. The Fed's tight monetary policy eventually bears fruit. It starts as a ripple, but all economic indicators very quickly turn green. The recovery that Reagan had dangled for so long finally arrives. From early 1983, economic activity is off again at breakneck speed, as is consumption too. Growth is so strong that 4 million jobs are created in no time. Americans feel like they are sprouting wings. They celebrate the entrepreneurs, managers, and decision makers who are making this wealth rain when hope had been lost. A newcomer enters the business world. A certain Donald Trump, crowned Manager of the Year. Soon, from London to Tokyo, from Ottawa to Paris, the conservative right of the planet takes inspiration from this shock therapy to revive their economies. Mulroney in Canada and Nakasone in Japan rush to follow in the footsteps of Ronald Reagan and Margaret Thatcher. The two apostles of this new, all-conquering and aggressive doctrine. And so it is that economic liberalism is exported, marking the beginning of a profound change in the world economic system. It is the time of the traders, of performance worship, and of cash is king. The stock market and financial markets take full advantage of the upturn. In the United States, people discover a passion for stock indexes. America becomes a gigantic casino where everyone speculates on the health of listed companies. And if the middle classes are doing well, then the most privileged are building colossal fortunes. They are billionaires, traveling by private jet and extolling the virtues of greed. Just like J.R. Ewing in the Dallas TV show, whose ruthless world haunts screens worldwide. But this brazen economic success does nothing to make Reagan forget his hostility towards the old enemy. It is such an obsession that it arises without warning.
Oh, somebody want a voice check? All right, my fellow Americans, I'm pleased to tell you today that I've signed legislation that will outlaw Russia forever. We begin bombing in 5 minutes.
An accidentally recorded inappropriate remark worthy of the best bloopers. Except that, when it came to being anti-Soviet, Reagan could not be more serious. He fears a nuclear attack by the evil empire, and so he decides to militarize space, to arm satellites with laser beams to annihilate enemy missiles. For this, Reagan forgets his legendary laziness and steps up to the plate. He spends hours trying to persuade the Pentagon to join his project. The Pentagon is not sure. Not only is it a money pit, but it is practically science fiction in technical terms. But Reagan persists, and to take everyone by surprise, he uses his lethal weapon, television.
The subject I want to discuss with you, peace and national security, is both timely and important. Timely because I've reached a decision which offers a new hope for our children in the 21st century.
Stunned Americans hear his plan to transform the United States into an impregnable fortress.
I know this is a formidable technical task, one that may not be accomplished before the end of this century.
Long accused of viewing the world in black and white, Reagan is riding the zeitgeist. Using the cult Star Wars line, Episode 3 is already on the billboards, he says to his critics, "The Force is with us." Behind this crazy-looking project hides a great intuition. In challenging the Russians to engage in a ruinous Star Wars, Reagan is betting that the financially hard-pressed Soviet Union will not be able to follow suit. But the president does not wait for this colossal project to become a reality to show his determination. On October 15, 1983, he launches Operation Urgent Fury, the biggest U.S. military deployment since the Vietnam War. Its target, the small Caribbean island of Grenada, that has fallen to a pro-Castro junta. The operation is presented as the destruction of a nerve center of the world revolution that is to be nipped in the bud. In 3 days, some 6,000 highly trained Marines wipe out the 1,500 fighters of the opposing forces. Pumped up by its troops' victory, the United States rejoices. The old cowboy is back in the saddle with a vengeance. He has fulfilled his pledges and is in the running for a new term. On May 21, 1984, a commercial appears for the first time on the small screen.
It's morning again in America. Today, more men and women will go to work than ever before in our country's history. With interest rates at about half the record highs of 1980, nearly 2,000 families today will buy new homes.
That says it all. What they cleverly hide behind this apparent success is that America is deeply in debt. After 4 years of Reaganomics, it is living on credit. Its economy is on life support. But Reagan will crisscross the country as though this reality does not exist. It is too disturbing. He prefers to speak to Americans' hearts. And when it comes to speaking to the heart, he is unrivaled.
Thank you. God bless you, and God bless America.
Then, like an actor who never tires of his best speeches, he hammers the point home at every appearance.
America is coming back and is more confident than ever about the future.
And America applauds. Impressed by his performance, even the leader of the opposition acknowledges his ideological approach is superficial, and yet this guy pulls it off. I'm appalled by his lack of depth, but his talent leaves me open-mouthed. I've never seen anything like it. That summer's Olympic Games give Reagan a crowning moment.
I declare open the Olympic Games of Los Angeles.
Boycotted by the USSR and all the Eastern Bloc countries, the Americans, playing at home with no serious competition, bag a huge medal tally. Like athlete Carl Lewis or gymnast Mary Lou Retton. Patriotic euphoria is at its peak. Americans have regained their former spirits. Bet won. However, a few days before the election, the president's incursion into a fast food restaurant leads to taunts.
You pay up there, Mr. President. You pay up there. Where? You mean there's a free lunch?
Reagan never masters the rituals of command. But that does not matter to the American people. Despite his gaffes, he remains cheerful and spontaneous, and the magic works. What is more, at the age of 73, he has not lost his bite. During the traditional debate, he puts his young challenger Walter Mondale onto the ropes.
I will not make age an issue of this campaign. I am not going to exploit, for political purposes, my opponent's youth and inexperience.
Mondale's running mate, Geraldine Ferraro, says, the public does not agree with Reagan on the budget, does not agree on his policies, does not agree on the environment, does not agree on the nuclear issue. But ask them about Reagan and they'll say he's great.
I'm a street homicide detective. Howard, sex, money, I don't think that murder changes.
Can 21st century police work and groundbreaking science crack history's unsolved crimes?
What do you think is going on there?
I think it's opportunity.
There's this phrase about letting the bones speak. But I think we've got our murder weapon.
I think the evidence is going to be there.
Brand new, unearthed, ancient murder mysteries. Thursday at 10 on Viasat History.
Gods, monsters, superhuman heroes.
The legend might well be true.
Are ancient treasures and dangers waiting to be found?
There's a shipwreck there. There's another one right there. That's just strange.
Something which even in this world of science we cannot fully explain.
An international network of experts test the limits of mystery.
Everybody's afraid of what they don't understand, especially when it can sneak up fast and kill you at a distance.
Are they one clue away from the truth?
Unbelievable.
Myths, great mysteries of humanity on Viasat History.
Pius XII was the Pope who failed to condemn Hitler.
Why didn't he say more?
We explore recently opened Vatican archives in search of answers.
Hitler does not trust Pius XII at all.
The Pope did what he could to save as many Jews as possible.
If they were caught, the Nazis' anger would be merciless.
Vatican secret files exposed. The Pope and the Devil. Monday at 10 on Viasat History.
To find the evidence, you've got to climb down through history.
These were the first fugitives in antiquity.
This is a copy of Grace Kelly's will, and it's fascinating.
It's amazing that it's here in situ, 800 years later.
It was about glory and power and wealth.
Holy cow.
Neanderthals probably lived on this planet longer than we have done so far.
This is the story of how the Vikings changed the world.
The term piracy is actually quite apt.
För dem var det en förmån att ha allians med kyrkan.
En fin de compte, c'est de s'installer. Ce n'est pas uniquement de piller à court terme.
Viking season on Viasat History.
The rise. The fall. And evolution.
Diana changed the way the monarchy appeared.
From the First World War to the present day.
It's very challenging, the craft of ruling these days.
The sensational story of power and its price. Royals Keeping the Crown. Sunday the 7th of May on Viasat History.
On November 6, 1984, he is re-elected by a landslide. This time, he wins 49 of the 50 states, nearly a grand slam. He's the only president apart from Roosevelt to have won by such a margin.
Thank you. I'm gonna do it just one more time. You ain't seen nothing yet.
However, Reagan takes on his second term with no ideas and no program. And his tendency to be lazy takes over once again. Especially as he's getting older. He's becoming increasingly deaf, increasingly slow, and increasingly absent. Yet even diminished, the US president is not prepared to play a bit part. Quite the contrary. He has 4 years left to complete his work. But how? The astrologer that the First Lady has been regularly consulting ever since the failed assassination attempt has no answer. When suddenly, Mikhail Gorbachev is propelled to the head of the Kremlin. In 1985, the Soviet Union is exhausted, bled dry by military spending. The black market is the only way for people to get by. So Gorbachev has to reform his country to save what can still be saved. He has to put a stop to the arms race in order to allocate the budget to the sectors of the economy that are in trouble. 2 weeks after taking office, he writes to the American president asking for a meeting. In the White House, the presidential advisors are wary, but an enthusiastic Reagan is quick to accept. In his diary, he writes, "I have been waiting for this moment for more than 5 years. There remains one essential detail, to decide on the most auspicious date." His wife's astrologer is called in to help. On November 19, 1985, with a favorable alignment of the planets, the historic meeting between the two giants takes place. It is cold in Geneva. Gorbachev arrives bundled up in his overcoat, and Reagan, looking dashing in his jacket, rushes to greet him and launches his charm offensive. The summit between the two most powerful men on Earth is also a communications war. And no one on Earth can eclipse Reagan when it comes to attracting the light. The image of the American braving the cold against the wrapped-up Russian flies around the world. A private face-to-face meeting is planned for a few minutes between the two leaders for them to get to know one another. This lasts over an hour. Nobody thought that Reagan could put on such a performance. The arms issue becomes the immediate focus of the discussion. Gorby wants reductions. Reagan cunningly does not say no, but reserves his response.
Mr. President, you think you are going to meet again, Mr. Gorbachev? Не торопитесь все узнать заранее.
Don't be in a hurry. Don't rush things and try to learn everything in advance.
In the end, the summit concludes with little progress. But back in Washington, Reagan solemnly announces that a star has been illuminated in the night of the Cold War. Like a pioneer setting foot in an unknown land, he says,
"As our forefathers who voyaged to America, we traveled to Geneva with peace as our goal and freedom as our guide. And now, here we are, gathered together on the edge of an unknown future. But like our forefathers, really not so much afraid, but full of hope and trusting in God as ever. Thank you for allowing me to talk to you this evening, and God bless you all."
Nicely played. In the summer of 1986, his popularity reached its zenith, up to a record-breaking 82% among young people. The poker game with Gorbachev resumes. Reagan knows perfectly well that the USSR is in trouble and that he holds all the cards to finish him off. The Russian arrives in Reykjavik, Iceland, with an unprecedented proposal: halving both countries' nuclear arsenals, eliminating intermediate-range missiles, and banning atomic tests. In short, ending 40 years of Cold War. But Gorbachev also requires the U.S. to abandon its Star Wars program. Reagan refuses. It would be out of the question to abandon a weapon that is already forcing the Russians to their knees. In an outburst of bad humor worthy of the stage, he leaves, slamming the door. This is a masterful bluff that piles on the agony for the Soviet Union. Then comes the affair that knocks him off his pedestal.
Nicaragua continues to insist tonight that a cargo plane shot down in that country was on a CIA mission.
On October 6, 1986, a cargo plane crashes in Nicaragua. On board, there are many tons of weapons being flown to opponents of the Sandinista regime and a former CIA agent.
Nicaraguan officials charged that Hassan Fous is an American military advisor working in El Salvador.
The Reagan administration denied any connection to the downed aircraft.
After weeks of uncertainty, a commission of inquiry confirms the involvement of the United States. Tainted by the scandal, Reagan gives assurances that he has no knowledge of it. However, everything shows that he is lying. Not only has he been waging a clandestine guerrilla war behind the back of Congress, but the whole thing has been financed by a sale of weapons to the Iranian regime, which is still under international embargo. Cornered by the evidence, Reagan has no choice but to acknowledge his guilt.
I understand this decision is deeply controversial and that some profoundly disagree with what was done.
A confession that is not enough to silence the press.
How can you justify this duplicity?
I don't think it was duplicity.
How would you assess the credibility of your own administration?
Mr. President, you have stated flatly you did not trade weapons for hostages.
The only thing I know about major shipments of arms, as I've said, everything that we sold them could be put in one cargo plane and there would be plenty of room left over.
But a lot of American people just simply don't believe you. Can you repair it? What does it mean for the rest of your presidency?
His fall in the polls is staggering. Members of Congress consider his impeachment, but there are not enough of them. Others see no need to bring on a crisis. Given his age, he is finished politically. But just like in the movies, political heroes never die. And Reagan will rise from the ashes like a phoenix. On June 12, 1987, he returns to the limelight with a memorable speech at the Berlin Wall.
General Secretary Gorbachev, if you seek peace, if you seek prosperity for the Soviet Union and Eastern Europe, if you seek liberalization, come here to this gate. Mr. Gorbachev, open this gate. Mr. Gorbachev, tear down this wall.
Six months later, the Soviet Union is dying on its feet, and Gorbachev is prepared to make any concessions. On December 8, 1987, Americans and Soviets endorsed the disarmament policy. Despite the seriousness of the business, Reagan, true to himself, cannot help making a joke. He even goes so far as to inflict one of his favorite anti-communist jokes on his counterpart. He casually says, "There are four things wrong with Russian agriculture: spring, summer, autumn, and winter." In a hurry to finish, Gorbachev plays the game and affects an embarrassed laugh. Reagan then tries to convince him of the existence of God. For the first time in history, both sides commit not only to limiting new weapons, but to destroying part of their arsenals. The duel between the two superpowers comes to an end without a shot being fired, and with it, 4 decades of Cold War. Praised by the press, Reagan becomes the architect of a diplomatic success that restores his country's image. A glory that leaves Gorbachev in the shadows. No laurel wreaths for him. A year later, the old president leaves the White House with a feeling of having accomplished his mission.
We meant to change a nation, and instead, we changed a world. All in all, not bad. Not bad at all.
And yet, Reagan's image as an incompetent president persists to this day. His record undoubtedly contains many failures. The giant hole in public finances, the concentration of wealth into the hands of a few, and the financialization of the economy are the lasting consequences of his years as head of the United States. For better or for worse, he remains a source of inspiration, a role model whose legacy lives on. In the movies, no one would doubt that he was a B-lister, but as head of the United States, he was able to turn his presidency into a blockbuster.
They'd done a deal to divide the country up between them.
Using fully restored and previously unseen footage. Greatest events of World War II in color on Viasat History.